The morning sun slipped lazily through the blinds, casting thin golden lines across the small kitchen as Daniel juggled a frying pan in one hand and a glass of milk in the other. His twin daughters were already awake, sitting at the table with messy ponytails and mischievous grins, each trying to grab the larger slice of banana he had cut. "I called it first," one shouted, while the other stuck her tongue out in protest. Daniel sighed, trying not to laugh, his exhaustion heavy in his bones after a week of back-to-back shifts. Being a single dad was the most rewarding thing he had ever done, but it often left him drained, with little time to breathe. He glanced at the clock and groaned, he was already running late. The knock on the door came just as the pancakes began to sizzle too long on one side. Wiping his hands on a dish towel, Daniel opened the door to find a young woman standing there. She wore jeans, a simple t-shirt, and her hair tied back in a neat ponytail. Her smile was warm, easy, the kind that instantly made people relax. She bent down, meeting the girls' eyes as they peeked curiously from behind their father, and introduced herself with a playful tone that made both twins giggle within seconds. Daniel felt his shoulders drop in relief. At least she seemed good with kids. He gave her a quick tour of the house, pointing out the twins' favorite toys, the stack of bedtime books, and the emergency contacts pinned to the fridge. She listened carefully, nodding, her expression thoughtful and attentive. Daniel didn't notice the quiet poise in her movements, or how her gaze held a certain confidence that went deeper than a part-time babysitter's role. To him, she was simply another helper sent by the agency, someone to lighten the load for a while. What he didn't know was that behind her calm smile, she carried a secret. She wasn't just an ordinary girl trying to earn some extra cash. She was here for reasons far beyond babysitting. But in that moment, as she settled in to help with the twins, Daniel only felt one thing, grateful that maybe, for once, the weight of his world wouldn't feel so heavy. Days rolled into each other, and Daniel soon noticed how naturally the babysitter blended into the rhythm of their lives. She wasn't just someone who kept the girls occupied, she seemed to bring calm into the house, as though she had always belonged there. When one of the twins threw a tantrum over mismatched socks, she crouched down, her voice patient and soothing, turning the meltdown into a game of magic sock powers, until both girls were laughing instead of crying. When the other grew stubborn about eating her vegetables, she invented a story about broccoli being tiny trees that superheroes needed for strength, and suddenly, dinner became an adventure. Daniel often found himself stopping in the doorway to watch. There was something magnetic in the way she handled the chaos, gentle, steady, yet firm enough that the twins listened to her. He couldn't remember the last time he had seen them so eager to follow rules without complaint. She filled the house with small joys, forts made of blankets, paper crowns decorated with glitter, and bedtime stories that turned into theatrical performances. The girls adored her, and Daniel couldn't help but feel a strange sense of ease he hadn't felt in years. And yet, he noticed something else too. For all her playful nature, she carried herself with a kind of grace he couldn't place. It wasn't the confidence of someone used to babysitting for a few extra dollars, it was something deeper, as if she came from a world much bigger than this. Sometimes, when she thought no one was looking, her expression grew thoughtful, even a little distant, as though she carried secrets she wasn't ready to share. Still, Daniel dismissed the thought. Why would a young woman like her, bright, polished, almost refined, choose to babysit in his modest home? It didn't make sense, but he wasn't about to question something that brought so much peace to his family. For her, though, the job meant more than Daniel could imagine. She had grown up in a world where wealth and power defined every interaction, where people looked at her name before they ever looked at her face. She wanted to know what it felt like to live simply, to be seen for who she was, not for the empire she was born into. With Daniel and his daughters, she wasn't the CEO's daughter, she was just a babysitter, a storyteller, a playmate, someone who could finally breathe without judgment. Every night, as she tucked the girls into bed and whispered goodnight, she felt the warmth of belonging. And every time Daniel thanked her, his tired smile filled with gratitude, her heart stirred with something she didn't expect, something real, fragile, and quietly growing. One evening, the house was quiet when Daniel finally pulled into the driveway, the sky already dipped in shades of purple and orange. His body ached from another long day on the construction site, sweat still clinging to his shirt, and he braced himself for the usual chaos, crayons on the walls, toys scattered across the floor, the twins fighting over who got to hold the TV remote. But when he stepped inside, what he saw stopped him in his tracks. The living room had been transformed. Pillows and blankets were stacked into a towering fort, glowing softly from a string of fairy lights she must have found in storage. The twins' laughter rang out like music as they peeked from behind the fortress walls, plastic crowns tilted on their heads. Standing at the entrance, wielding a plastic sword, was the babysitter, her face full of mock seriousness as she declared herself the guardian of the castle. The girls shrieked with joy when she fought off imaginary dragons, swinging the toy sword with dramatic flair. Daniel leaned against the doorway, exhaustion melting into something lighter, something he hadn't felt in a long time. He chuckled softly, catching her eye for just a moment. Their gazes met, and in that instant, a quiet understanding passed between them, two people carrying burdens, finding joy in the laughter of children. He joined in the game, pretending to be the invading knight, and for the first time in weeks, the weight of responsibility didn't feel so heavy. Later, after the twins finally drifted to sleep in their beds, the house settled into a comforting stillness. Daniel walked into the kitchen to find her making tea, her sleeves rolled up, her hair a little messy from the day's adventures. He sat down, and without meaning to, the words spilled out. He told her about the long hours, about how raising twins alone sometimes felt like trying to swim against an endless tide. His voice cracked when he spoke of the nights he worried he wasn't enough for them, that he couldn't give them everything they deserved. She listened without interrupting, her eyes soft and intent, as though every word he spoke mattered. When he paused, she offered gentle reassurance, not with empty phrases, but with the kind of sincerity that reached deeper than he expected. "You're already giving them the most important thing," she said quietly. "Your love. Everything else, pancakes, forts, silly games, those are just extras. What they need most, they already have." Her words lingered in him, settling somewhere he didn't realize was aching. Daniel hadn't let himself open up like this in years, but with her, it felt natural, even necessary. He didn't know why he trusted her so easily, why her presence made the silence between them feel safe, rather than uncomfortable. What he couldn't see was the war inside her, the pull between the life she had always known and the life she was discovering here, with him and the twins. And as the steam from the tea curled into the air, Daniel caught himself staring at her a moment longer than he should have. Something unfamiliar stirred inside him, something fragile, unspoken, but undeniable. The truth came out on a morning that began like any other. Daniel flipped on the television while making breakfast, the smell of toast filling the kitchen. The twins were still rubbing sleep from their eyes, dragging their stuffed animals to the table. He wasn't paying much attention at first, the news droning in the background, until a familiar face caught his eye. He froze, spatula in hand, as the camera zoomed in on the babysitter. She stood beside an older man in a tailored suit, speaking confidently at a press conference. The headline running across the screen made his stomach twist: CEO introduces daughter and heir to the company. Daniel's mind reeled. The poised young woman in the news clip, smiling, graceful, commanding the room, was the same girl who just last night had been kneeling on the floor, gluing googly eyes onto paper crowns with his daughters. He felt the room spin as questions crashed into each other. Why hadn't she told him? Why had she come here at all? Later that day, the doorbell rang. Daniel hesitated, his chest tight, before opening the door. There she was, standing in the doorway, her usual jeans and t-shirt replaced by something simpler than what he had seen on the screen, as if she wanted to leave that world behind when she came here. Her hands were nervously clasped, her eyes searching his face. "I didn't mean to deceive you," she said softly, her voice trembling in a way he had never heard before. "I just wanted to be me. Not a name, not an inheritance, just someone who could belong without judgment." Before Daniel could respond, the twins bolted from behind him, squealing her name. They wrapped their little arms around her legs, clinging to her as though nothing had changed. To them, she wasn't a CEO's daughter. She was the babysitter who built castles out of pillows, who read stories with funny voices, who kissed their scraped knees and made everything feel better. Daniel's sternness wavered as he watched the scene. The truth should have made him angry, but all he saw was the genuine bond she had with his girls, the kind of bond that couldn't be faked. His gaze softened as he finally met her eyes. "You should have told me," he said, his voice low, heavy with both frustration and something more tender. "I was afraid if I did, you'd see someone I'm not," she whispered. "I wanted you and the girls to know me before you knew all the rest." Silence stretched between them, thick but not unbearable. And in that silence, Daniel realized something. Wealth, titles, legacies, none of it changed what she had given his daughters, or what she had quietly given him. She had shown up when they needed someone most, not as a CEO's daughter, but as a young woman with a heart that cared deeply. He exhaled slowly, tension easing from his shoulders. "What matters is who you've been here," he said finally. "And here, your family." Her eyes shimmered with relief as the twins tugged her inside, giggling and demanding another castle. Daniel stepped back, letting them in, his chest full of emotions he couldn't quite name. For the first time in a long while, he felt hope that maybe, just maybe, this unexpected twist in their lives was the beginning of something they all needed.